Thank you guys for coming to this session this morning. This is the institutional buying and selling matchmaking event today. So I'm Alita Peterson. I coordinate the Maine Farm and Seed Institution Network. And just to provide a little bit of context, background of like how we got here. About this time last year, our network went through a strategic planning process that identified a greater need for more opportunities for explicit connections between institutional buyers and local producers. And so since then we have stood up this work group, the Institutional Buying and Selling Work Group, that meets monthly to think about different ways that we can better support matchmaking between our local producers and institutional buyers. And so we partner with Brittany and we come up with these ideas for matchmaking events. We're also thinking about different producer toolkits, and we did a great site visit to Mountain View Correctional this fall to build relationship and learn some more about their farm to institution processes. So we meet monthly. If you're interested in joining us or have some input for how we could better support you as an institutional buyer or local producer, please get in touch. We've got a sign up in the back, an informational pamphlet, some other Maine Farm and Seed Institution related flyers back there, as well as our list of registrants for today's event. So be sure to pick those up on your way out today. I want to introduce my co-facilitator, Brittany, here. Brittany, you want to say?
Sure. Yeah, hi. My name is Brittany Peets, and I work for the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry, and I focus specifically on increasing farm to institution. So it's been great working with Alita and learning from a lot of you about what some of your challenges are in buying and selling. Louder. Yeah, we could also use this. Can you hear me now, Penny?
No.
No. Can you hear me now? Yes, so I work for the Department of Agriculture, focused on farm to institution, and over the past year and a bit have been talking to a lot of you about the challenges that some of you all are facing in terms of selling to institutions, as well as being able to purchase from local producers and farmers. So yeah, we're gonna have a panel, and then we're gonna have a time for you all to meet each other really quickly in kind of like a speed dating format. So we'll kind of separate producers and sellers and those who are interested in buying local food. So it'll be a really fun way for you to quickly meet a lot of people, and then we'll leave some time at the end for you to talk a little bit more.
More details on how that's going to exactly work when we get there. But for now, want to turn it over to our great lineup of panelists here. We've got some questions about how they've found success in their farm to institution relationships to inspire and generate questions for you all, and then we'll get into that facilitated networking. So if we all just want to kind of go down the line, I'll pass the mic off, and if you could share your name, your affiliation, a little bit about your organization, and then we'll get into some more specific questions. We'll kick it off with you, Amber.
And there's plenty of room down front if people do want to sit.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out early to this panel. My name is Amber Lampke. I'm the founder and CEO of Maine Grains in Skowhegan. We are a grist mill that processes regionally grown grains and distributes throughout the Northeast. So we make fresh stone milled flour, rolled oats, polenta, cornmeal, buckwheat flour, pearled grains, cooking grains, and we serve bakers, brewers, and chefs throughout the Northeast. We launched our business in 2012 really to try to address the gap in infrastructure that was here in the state of Maine to be able to eat the grains that were being grown as cover crops. So when you think about oats and rye and buckwheat, those have all been common cover crops on farms here in Maine. And we were missing some of the infrastructure that could, for example, crack a husky coating off of an oat so that we could eat the inside. So our business helped to solve that in the state of Maine, and I'm sure you've all been watching Maine's grain economy really blossom over the last decade with more mills and malt houses and state support for more cleaning and drying and storage on farms. So we have the pleasure of working with a lot of Maine's distributors and institutions, and look forward to talking more about that today.
Good morning. My name is Colleen Halen-Smith, and I'm here representing Peak Season, which is a wholesale distribution and logistics company based in Unity. We work with over 70 Maine farmers and food producers to distribute food to wholesale accounts, institutions included, with a focus especially building out our K through 12 relationships, K through 12 school relationships in these next years. I'm also the co-owner of Daybreak Growers Alliance, which is one of our key partners in that endeavor, facilitating shared resources around warehousing and trucking. So I've met some of you in that capacity as well, and it's great to be here with you this morning.
Good morning. I am Blair Andrews. I'm one of the farm managers at Velma Root Organic Farm in Windham, kind of the South Windham area near Gorham. We are a small organic veggie and flower farm with our main markets kind of being wholesale, restaurants, stores in the greater Portland area. We have a CSA and an on-site farm stand. And since about 2021 have been working to kind of increase our selling to schools and nonprofits in the greater Portland area, but currently doing most of our partnering with RSU 14 in the Windham Raymond area with Chef Brian Roderick. So, thank you.
Hi, Mike Flynn. I'm a nutrition director for public school, RSU 12. I do participate in a lot of chef activities. I'm a certified chef. Thank you, Shelley Garay, for the motivation to achieve that a decade or so ago, 2010. So thanks again for that support. Worked with Shelley at Maine General for a while, learning about how important this conversation is. Working at Maine General and seeing many of the patients in situation, compromised choice of food. I do work with KWE as a chef, nights, weekends, summer, and they are a perfect site for farmer processing. They're in the room, so hopefully you'll meet up with them about opportunity to do something around the Damascotta area with your growing. I have met Jolly Farm, Moses in the back room there. Still waiting for an invite to grow potatoes with you. Learn how to grow that sweet potato that is not common in Maine. Matt Weston's in the room too. I work a lot with him in processing, so I'm trying to learn everything I can as a food buyer. I jump in his kitchens or his processing areas just to figure out, how a good product can be in the school lunch program. So that's where I spend my time. I have spent my time out on the ocean with Susan's Alcott's Fishermen's Association when the fishermen are shorthanded. So thanks, Susan, for that. So there's a lot of folks in the room that are going to make something really cool happen. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Maeve McGinnis. Apologies for being late. I can't walk very fast, so parking is fun. My work for Sodexo, probably the biggest company most people have never heard of. And my job is to get more Maine food into the college campuses that we operate here in the state, of which we operate about 15 at the moment. And what else am I supposed to say? Yeah, okay.
Super, so we have a couple questions for you all. So if you are a buyer, why do you work with local producers? And if you are a local producer, why do you sell to institutions?
I think the simple answer to that as a buyer is it's the right thing to do. Supporting the community in which we work is a major tenet of how Sodexo works.
even though they are a large company, there is a huge emphasis within the value statement within the company that it's part of our corporate social responsibility. And then to take that, even a little bit further, I have a very dedicated team here of Mainers who are very excited about supporting their own neighbors and people that live in Maine. So for us, it's just a no-brainer. Also, you can bring in, the environmental piece of that, of wanting to make sure that we're supporting a healthy environment and also healthy communities. Having fresh local food. There's a lot of research showing that that's better for our students, so it's a huge piece of it.
Great. Well, as a producer, we appreciate our relationship with Sodexo. I would say there's a few reasons why it's important for us as producers to sell to institutions. One is that we all need to eat in our communities. That takes farms, and our farms can produce the things that we need to eat. So institutions are sometimes concentrated bodies of eaters, and so it makes sense to be matching these two things, right? From a producer standpoint, we need volume and efficiency to run our businesses. So that is one reason to try to be a matchmaker as a producer to the things that an institution could work onto their menu or into their programs. And the last point I think I would make is we just received a Kendall Food Vision Prize, and that is in partnership with a number of different partners, one being Sodexo. And the impetus for those prizes are that you are exposing local food to the next generation of eaters and buyers. And so institutions are where we find children and college students and critical thinkers that are going to be our customers in the next generation. And so it is important to be showing folks and having them taste the things that are grown right in their backyard.
I would say at both companies that I represent with peak season here today, really the central focus is to create a viable marketplace for Maine farmers and food producers and increase accessibility of those Maine-grown foods for the people of Maine, with institutions, as Amber was noting, being a huge opportunity to do that. And as a company focused on figuring out those logistics, have also found that institutions can present a slower sales growth process or an opportunity, or both an opportunity but also a challenge to sort of figure out the unique needs of institutions, and we seek to provide those services in that effort to connect Maine producers with Mainers, accessibility to Maine foods. All of what we distribute is Maine-grown foods and value-added companies that are prominently featuring Maine-grown ingredients, and so it's very central to our focus, and institutions are a key part of that.
Excuse me. As I suppose a producer, I can speak mostly to why we work with schools, and kind of more simply put, we sell to schools because we want kids to have access to like the most nutrient dense and freshest locally produced foods that they can. And I think the value of young children learning where their food comes from is pretty immeasurable. The management team at Bumbleroot all have children, and it's a partnership that's pretty important to us, and we always are looking to grow those partnerships. So excited to learn from you all and meet you all and do that here. But I think there's more like logistical reasons aside from just the education and the fresh local food. We can often move produce to schools that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily have a market for. The past couple of winters, we've been able to move the tiny carrots that kids love and restaurants don't to RSU 14, which has been amazing. And those obviously store all winter, and we can do that at a pretty regular schedule. seconds tomatoes, things that schools can process, has been a big one for us. And yeah, it's the flexibility with schools to take things when we have them in abundance. Those bumper crop years has been great.
Yeah, it's great to hear your partnership with the schools. For me, it's like I'm as good as my teammate is, meaning I'm responsible for 5 kitchens. So it's my teammate that's in that single kitchen, is their buy-in is of like mind, hopefully. But there's a percentage of your teammates that are gonna wanna be in this room, and it's not more than 50%, in my opinion. So in schools, in my experience, we're half interested in doing the right thing, but that's half in the right direction. So my goal is to help the other half try to have interest, to try to promote what the growers are growing and why, and just let them know that, you know, it's a wellness thing. And I think even stepping back from that, there's a friend in the room, Martha Poliquin, who's been a mentor since I get into kids nutrition. And she created something called the Farm and Seed Institute for public schools. And that's where I learned a lot. A couple years ago, our school joined that program. And what they do is they reach out to folks other than me that is flopping around trying to figure out what to do for the kids. I get emails that are less than friendly because I serve processed food today, or I get emails, why would I serve broccoli from the farmer up the street? You know, so you get the 2 spectrums from parents. So there's that in my world. But once I learned from Martha that invite everyone in the room, meaning your principals, your superintendent, your parents, and that helps kind of take that edge off trying to do the right thing with the 50% that aren't interested. The 50% that are interested in doing it right, they're calling these folks, ordering food, and Colleen has been serving, I think, Windsor School. They're hitting it out of the park for us. They're buying over $1,000 a week, maybe on average,
It's been a solid account.
for organics. That's never been done in public school, and we spend maybe $2,000 a week at that school. So that's great. That's great to see that happen. So, pardon me. So you need to meet Martha to talk more about schools and how to penetrate them. And I think she's working with. I can hand you the mic. You can speak better. So yeah, it's fun to see this. I've been coming here for 20 years as a food buyer. My wife and I have a farm in West Gardner that we're trying to figure out how to grow food. So to see this happen now with my job, it's really cool, you know, so thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Mike, for that Maine Farm and Seed to School Institute plug. We've got more info in the back if you are connected to a school community who might be interested in that opportunity. And yes, Martha's here to speak more to that as well. So our next question is around what you needed to do with your institution or business to prepare for a farm to institution relationship. So if you're a producer, what did you need to sort of get financially ready for that? Were there tools that you used? And on the other end, as an institution, you know, what did you need to do to prepare to onboard some more local producers through your local food procurement program?
Mike, you wanna start?
What was the question? What can I do to promote more?
What did you do to prepare?
Oh, what more to prepare? I met Shelley Garay over there, Maine General, excellent wellness food buyer and manager. How did I prepare?
Do you use
Well,
forward contracts or any tools like that, Mike, when you're working with local farms, or is there anything that you need to do to get buy-in from your administration or anything like that.
Thank you, thanks. Well, I saw RSU 12's post for public school nutrition. I knew the superintendent, I worked with him before. We tried to do something in another district, but we sort of were kicked out with this wellness idea. So the fact that he was advertising for a nutrition director, the first line said, implement more plant-based food. So he virtually inverted the job description, meaning follow USDA guidelines was down here. So that wasn't the focus for him. It was do the right thing and work your way towards complying and doing the right thing in that area. So that was a big motivator for me. So if you're in your school district and you're seeing less than food, I would think just reach out to that kitchen. I wouldn't reach out to the super, I wouldn't reach out to the nutrition director, I'd reach out to the kitchen, partner with them, and they'll kind of pry that window open if it's not happening. Is that answering the question? Or am I kind of all over the joint? And for me, that works because I signed up for a superintendent that was all in. So that was easy. And I'm pre-K through 8th grade. That's easy. Once you hit 9th grade, you know, they've got a little more control unless you have them buying in at pre-K through 8. So hopefully the 8th grade graduates have interest. Even on the way here, maybe that's helping me get my thoughts together is the drive here. Heather, your sister, gave me a call. She's creating something called the Good Crust, which is 100% Maine grain, which is a perfect product for schools, so a value-added item. So we're chatting about, you know, how's it going, what's happening. Well, she's an occupational therapist, educator. Her staff is of her world in that arena. Is that okay? So I guess for me, hanging out with the right people, trying to figure out how to do the right thing, encourage the 50% that are all in, give them all the tools they need, don't limit them to spending money. So that's what I do at the school, is just step back and see where I can help, since I don't do a lot of the processing. But I cheer them on when I see Colleen's invoices come through.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say there wasn't a lot we had to prepare necessarily in working with the public schools. But, you know, we had to think about what our goals were, and think about just the flexibility that's needed in that partnership. I think, you know, flexibility in communication, flexibility in pricing, and just kind of schedule and availability. We're so lucky that we're working with a school who's super passionate about bringing food, and we both kind of bring this same energy level. So I think it does just take people who are committed to doing it. But, you know, there have been times where the school has been able to pay us our, you know, full price for a product, and times when price breaks seemed appropriate and were necessary for the school. So I think just us being realistic about things like price, and yeah, knowing that they might not be in our regular delivery route. So we might need to ask them to come pick up produce, or we might have to kind of shift our schedule around to accommodate that. But really just kind of going in open-minded, and I think meeting schools where they're at.
I'm definitely happy to speak to or answer any questions about the logistics and operational preparations over the course of years, but I think really what drives it and has driven a career in building, or you know, working with food producers to aid in building the marketplace for Maine grown foods is relationship building. So really what you're getting an opportunity to do today, that really drives everything. And Mike was speaking to that with the schools that he oversees and how much of a difference it makes if you can get buy-in between whether you're the food producer or you're a distributor or you're the buyer. It really comes down to building those relationships that will make the difference between garnering those sales and the opportunity to be entering into institutional markets. So I really can't stress that one enough and applaud you all for being here and pursuing that further.
Great, thanks. Kicking off of what Colleen just said, I was going to suggest as a producer, first figure out the lay of the land. Who are the early adopters in the institutional markets? And when we say institutions, I'm thinking of schools, hospitals, jails, and I also think about where my business is located and the concentric circles around my business. It's going to be easier to sell closer to me, where people are more likely to know our business and know our employees and maybe feel like they have a connection. It may be harder to sell farther away. But figure out who are the early adopters, because if you know that a school district has already made a commitment to 100% of our apples are going to come from Maine, or 100% of our potatoes in our kitchens are going to come from Maine, then it might be an easier sell to say, hey, did you know that we produce a lot of oats in Maine, and Maine is conducive to the cool, moist climate that oats love, and so could all your oatmeal be from Maine too? So assess that, and really I started learning who those early adopters through events like this and going to farm to institution conferences, because an institutional buyer that's going to a farm to institution conference is already self-selected as someone who's interested. So highly encourage you to go to some of those events. And the other point I wanted to make is, once you know who those early adopters are, you need to think about what's the lowest hanging fruit in that institution. And so I think back to some of the earliest things we tried with Sodexo, which are that whole grains might be a hard sell in the dining halls, in the university systems, but if you embed a brown flour in a chocolate brownie, you're never going to see it. Desserts are low-hanging fruit because they're easily accepted. And do we want to move in other directions with grains and beans? Yes, absolutely. But where do you put them to be able to start getting acceptance, and then you have a point of education with students to tell them, oh, did you know what you're eating, and that sort of thing. The other thing I think about with hospitals or even colleges is, if oatmeal is the sell, well, we have to understand as producers, how is that being presented? How long does that need to stay warm on a line? What's it being turned into? Do the oats turn into mush if they're warm for too many hours? Maybe they prefer the cracked oats, which hold up longer while being held warm. So understand how these ingredients are being used. Is your competition a commodity product that your buyer isn't necessarily going to understand why there's a price differential there? And is it a point of education that needs to come first? So really, I see Mark in the audience. I mean, one of my entry points with Mark at Mountain View Correctional Facility was just learning about their baking program and where do you currently get your flour? What do you pay? Do we have a product that could compete on price there to make this an easy switch? And just so just get to know how your primary ingredient is used and consumed in the institution.
I just want to say, as a buyer, some of the thought process that Amber just mentioned is huge. I mean, thinking about how long your product is sitting, maybe in an institution, can really help aid that relationship that you might be trying to form with a buyer. Because we both live in separate worlds, right? We might not be able to say, hey, your product's not holding up as well because of X, Y, and Z, because it's just our world. So it's really helpful to have someone that's thinking some of these things through. So as a buyer, I just want to start off by giving a little background on how we buy local food, because I think it's somewhat different from some of the K through 12 schools. So as part of a company, we buy all of our food through distributors. So we buy through Cisco, we buy through Native Maine, and then for some of our other liquid dairy, seafood, bakery, we have regional contracted product through certain companies. And so to be able to buy from local producers when we started 10 years ago, we had to sit down with our distribution partners, like Native Maine, well, at the time it was PFG, now it is Cisco, but at the time we had to sit down with PFG, as a larger company and say, hey, will you partner with us on making this happen? Because essentially, our relationship with you and being able to source local food is gonna hinge on you coming to the table and making exceptions where we need exceptions to be made. And so I think Colleen had said this, relationship building is definitely a huge piece of being able to make local sourcing work when you have other competing priorities within a company. And so that was part of our process. And then making it easier for the buyer. Like I said, I represent 15 accounts. And so those are 15 individual people, chefs, some of them have, a food buyer who have to buy into the program. And so creating resources, training documents, making it easy for them to get the local product was a big piece for us. And then education, have engagement with producers like Amber, where in December, her and I and some of our chefs got together to work on solving, for growing the type of grains that we're able to buy and utilize in the dining hall. And so again, it goes back to that relationship building, being able to come to the table and do some problem solving together. And then engaging with students, I think, is another crucial part for us. I think someone mentioned this, but we have the opportunity by engaging students to hopefully shape the way that they choose to use their dollars, food dollars, when they leave college. So they recognize some of the local brands, or they understand the thought process behind supporting local companies as well. And they choose to do that when they go out on their own and buy their own food. And then I think just lastly, having someone in my position to be able to have the relationship with producers, but also to walk producers through getting into a company like Cisco has been a huge part of our success in what we've been doing. So
actually, I just wanted to piggyback a couple more things that I thought of. Pack sizes might matter. So ask your institutions, if I'm selling to a distributor and now I know that the product is going to go to 15 different colleges, it may not be best for a 50-pound bags to go on a pallet. It might be better to have 25 so that they can be dispersed, consumed freshly, and then reordered efficiently. So think about pack sizes and how your institution will need the product. Also, recipes, most of the institutions we're talking about have other requirements beyond just sourcing interest with regard to recipes. So nutrition analysis, percent whole grains, that sort of thing. Know how your institution forms their recipes. What's their database? It's the easiest switch is going to be something that you produce that they can switch right into a recipe that they're already using. We have some tremendous benefit in Maine, particularly in the University of Maine system, that our chefs here are leaders, and they are now influencing other states in the recipe development that lends itself to local sourcing. So just understand what those kinds of things are. And the last thing that occurred to me too is many years ago, the former staffer with Slow Food, Josh Vertel, if any of you remember Josh, was hired as a consultant to help the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture figure out how to convert more of their purchasing to local. And the question that he was presented with initially by the school was, we use 60 dozen eggs a week. How do we get more eggs from local producers to supply our breakfast program at 60 dozen eggs a week? And his first input to them was, that may be the wrong question, which is why are you trying to overconsume a resource that may be difficult to find? And so he called local producers, including Maine Grains, and his question was, what's the annoying byproduct in your mill that you have a hard time moving? What could be moved on at discount prices and help you to keep all of your raw materials flowing through the mill? And I have quick answers to those things. I mean, that's an easy thing for me to put my finger on. Yeah, if you want bran flour really cheap, we got that, and let's help you figure out how to work bran flour, or whatever the case may be. And so we were able to make inroads with that institution by looking at really primarily cost and raw material supply chain movement.
Those are great answers. I feel like there were so many takeaways about flexibility and kind of doing your research and communicating well with people and education. I want to dive a little bit more into the kind of communication part, because I think that that's something that people have mentioned as being a barrier of not knowing who to communicate with or what to communicate about, kind of what those channels look like. So maybe you could go into a little bit more detail about what that looks like for you. How did you find the right people to work with? How do you navigate some of those challenges? As Maeve and Amber, it seems like you work really well together, and you mentioned, we're coming from different angles on this of, how we use different ingredients versus how we make the product. So maybe you can talk about what communication challenges you've kind of overcome and what that looks like. You can skip.
Anyone else dying to answer this question?
For schools, it's always at the moment. It seems to be with communication, it's what is the most sense of urgency, how many staff are out, things like that. With that, again, the drive here, an email from principal from Palermo, Mike, the class 8th graders met, cafeteria committee, they want this on February menu. And if I had my glasses, I'd read it to you. Chicken tenders, the standard fare that you might see in public school. And in my mind, I'm trying to think, how can we make that from a local product? So that's what we're doing at our school district for communication. So the kids are writing idea, then they meet with me and we do a class together to try to make the product and then consider it worthy to get on the menu. So that's the best communication I could share with you, and that's happening every day for us. We could be in classroom right now making a chicken tender that the way it should be made with your lovely grain, hopefully. Through the holiday break, Susan helped us afford to pay some of the staff to spend a couple extra days in production. Susan's from the Mid-Coast Fishermen's Association, and we're tasked to create some fish tots, fish cakes. And right now I'm struggling with every ingredient. This might be 9 ingredients, which is perfect for a chef. How can all of that be in Maine? So please help us. Particularly, how's your corn meal? I called you about, was that gluten-free certified?
We don't
Put me on the
certify.
spot. You don't certify. So that's the goal, is include all the kids, communicate. The principals email me all the time about what the cafeteria clubs are doing at each 5 site. So that helps, and then I try to get the team in the kitchen. But again, I try not to control their decisions. I want them to meet with the kids. But yeah, we're still flopping around, but it's going really well.
I think I kind of touched on communication earlier and the need for the flexibility and just open-mindedness. But I think something that's been effective for us is kind of just going beyond the sale. Like we've all mentioned, those personal relationships and kind of community connections are super important. And you know, it's really easy for communication to get lost in someone's inbox if they're just receiving, you know, our weekly wholesale availability list. But circling back with a more direct form of communication, you know, letting the schools know what we have and what it looks like and how we're loving to eat it, or giving them a heads up what we're having in a few weeks coming down the pike, or what, you know, we're kind of running low on. Yeah, and I think just Ryan at RSU is in our CSA now. I think just those personal connections are so important, and yeah, going beyond the sale.
I think also if you're a producer deciding, or a buyer really, deciding how much time you have for communication and what's your strategy behind that. Do you want to be directly distributing to your customers? Do you want to be working with an aggregator or a broker or distributor to accomplish that? How much time and capacity do you have to be putting towards communication and how to manage that? Kind of drilling into some of the logistical items and working with institutions. Also identifying, as you would in any sales process, there may be a completely different person who's actually going to send you that order than the person who's the contact. There may be a completely different person who's responsible for billing than the person that's going to be receiving your order. So asking specific questions, kind of putting yourselves in the shoes of your buyer and thinking about how their operations might work and how to drill down into who you need to be speaking to for which aspect of that sales process.
That's a great suggestion. Make a list of your questions, and if you're doing a good job as a seller and a producer, you're keeping your buyer talking and giving you information about their process as much as possible, because you want to learn. I was going to add that keep in mind, if you are selling to a school, there may not be anyone who wants to talk to you in the summer or in September, or so, you know, so you have to be mindful of their schedules, know when they make decisions. Certainly if you're selling to grocery stores, you're familiar with planogram review schedules. Your category might not get reviewed but every 2 years. It's incredibly frustrating. You miss a window and you won't have that conversation for another couple of years. And if you take your institution's perspective, you know, it's hard to vet all the interested local producers that might want to sell to Sodexo. So there may be a window to consider your particular product and know what that is, and then be mindful of that as well.
I think of this question, like, I guess in two ways. We communicate on a regular basis with our current vendor partners, but also, so part of my program, we have an advisory board, and that advisory board is made up of external stakeholders in the food system throughout Maine. And we have an annual review process of our opportunities to switch something from non-local to local. That usually happens in late September, October, sometimes early November, depending. But that's an opportunity where our team gets together and identifies with the advisory board that we have, you know, what are their growth opportunities? And from there, the communication on what those opportunities are happen in a number of different ways between, you know, our advisory board members who might be connected to certain groups of producers. You know, we have Ron from the Cheese Guild, right? And so he might be able to communicate directly to his network of people. And then I come to different events like this where I'm able to communicate what we're really looking for, you know, what those opportunities are. Like pizza cheese is probably the biggest thing on my mind at the moment. We all love pizza, right? College campuses, even K through 12, like that's an opportunity. And then really just connecting. I mean, Maine's a small place, so connecting the the dots between people trying to talk to anyone and anyone about like what we're looking for. And I think Amber knows us very well and knows that, you know, a schedule, knowing the timing of when you're reaching out, knowing that, you know, your product might not be the priority that we're looking for at the moment, but that doesn't mean that in a year or 2 years we wouldn't be interested. And so having some patience and like, okay, she's not saying no, but she's saying like, we need to put this on the back burner because, you know, in recent years, like we keep losing our local meat producers or chicken producer. And so, and that's a huge part of our local spend. And when that happens, everything like gets put on the back burner, unfortunately. And then I think Mike had talked about this too, is just, as all of us are, you know, labor issues happen, stuff like that. So sometimes it might feel like communication is not going anywhere, but understand that we're all wearing, you know, 10 hats to try to get stuff done these days. So it's just having a little persistence and patience always pays off and is appreciated as well.
I was just gonna tack on to, accept no, but don't stop at no. Understand what no really means for your institution. It may mean no, not now. It may mean, you know, I had an institution once that said no because we've now set an aspirational goal of making sure that our local program buys within 100 miles of our institution. Well, in the world of greens, that might work. But in the world of grains, within 100 miles of your institution, you may not have farmers at scale with the equipment that can keep you in grains. So that may be an education issue that's gonna take a while. Why are grains different than greens in terms of aspirational radius goals or regional collaboration goals? We've heard no on the basis of price. I've had institutions want our product on a per pound basis for less than we pay the farmer for the raw material. And that is a mismatch in understanding kind of how the larger world of commodities and grains and soy and wheat play into local grain economies. And why are grains important to keep in New England, even though we're small states with different geography than Iowa and Kansas? Well, that's a big educational problem. But keep in mind that institutions have lots of people that will be at the table making these decisions, some of whom don't understand these issues fully enough to understand even what they're asking when they ask you for a price that is less than raw materials.
That was great. Awesome mix of some more kind of zoomed out approaches around relationship building and the importance of going beyond the sale, and also some really practical, tactical solutions to navigating communications. We're gonna move on, but let's thank our panelists for their expertise.